And my name is Dekel. I work at VMware. I run product marketing for our App Cloud and VMforce initiatives. Together with me, Jesper. I will not try to pronounce your last name. He's the product manager at Salesforce.com, and he will be presenting with me today. A little background. I've been in the cloud business, I think, for like 6 years now, starting from startups to private clouds at Yahoo to VMware. So it's a very interesting journey, as you heard in the keynote, from infrastructure as a service, private cloud, and platform as a service. What we'll describe today is something we're all extremely excited about, a very innovative joint venture between VMforce and Salesforce.com, which is called VMforce. And the idea of this joint venture is to allow Java developers to benefit from the cloud, and specifically to benefit from Salesforce.com services and data and huge customer base. And it's a platform as a service, so we'll describe a little bit what does that mean. And we'll dive into the features and value propositions. You'll hear about the Salesforce.com services and the Force.com services that are under the hood. And we'll show you a demo. So we're pretty excited. This whole thing is live. It's running now on the cloud in Salesforce.com data centers. And we'll show you a live demo, how you build an app, how you deploy it, and actually how you interact between Java and Salesforce.com. So where is our cool gadget? Oh, here it is. Yay. So you heard a lot about this week around the infrastructure maintenance. How do infrastructure as a service, infrastructure in general, virtualization, and so on. We are focusing on the green pie here, which is application maintenance. And as you can see from this chart, this is pretty significant effort for IT organizations today to deal with application maintenance. What we mean by application maintenance is how do I deploy, manage, scale up, scale down, make sure my application is alive, make sure if something happens, if an instance fails, I can still run with other instances coming into play, make sure I can deal with increasing workloads. So if I'm starting from low amount of usage and growing to a big amount of usage, how can I do that? And probably most importantly is how do I do that in a way that my developers can focus on writing their business logic. What this means is I don't want my developers to worry about how do I cluster my application. I don't want my developers to worry about how do I scale, how do I load balance, how do I message between different components, how do I connect to a database. I want them to write their business logic, what they are, what the value they bring to my organization. That's what I want them to do. And platform as a service allows you to do exactly that. It takes care of the complexity surrounding the application and lets you focus on your business logic. Oh, that's quite... So how many folks here in the room are dealing with operations? DevOps, operations, data center management. So I'm sure none of this is new to you. Probably keeps you awake at night. It's definitely something I've seen over and over again in huge implementation, globally scaled like Yahoo and other places. And this is extremely costly. And what happens is that if your developers needs to worry about those things on the top, there are pretty severe impacts. Lower agility and time to market, significant engineering efforts that is being centralized or being focused not on improving my added value, not on improving my actual business logic and application, but trying to scale, trying to cluster, trying to maintain HA, a lot of integration problems. And on top of all that, if I can't, think about it, if I can't really scale on demand, This means if I can trust my platform to scale when I need it, when I grow from 100 users to 100,000 users, I have to over-provision. I have to make sure I can deal with this capacity all the time. So I end up with over-provisioning capacity for the peakest time of the year instead of just maintaining my current workload and scale when I need it. So as you can imagine, the solution to that is the topic of our talk, which is platform as a service. And what do we mean when we're saying platform as a service? We mean a couple of key principles. The first one is a curated software stack. What this means is that I described the challenges earlier in the platform layer. So you have a database, you have messaging, you have load balancing, you have your business logic, and you have other components that you need to integrate. We basically take this prescriptive or basically set of services, and we pick and choose that, and we wire that automatically. So in the case of VMforce, you're actually getting the access to the force.com database and the access to the force.com services that you'll hear more about a bit later, fully integrated, fully automated into your code. The developer, the Spring developer that writes the Java code actually doesn't need to know about that. We, as you'll see in the demo, we actually take, if you're familiar with the concept of WAR files, WAR files, which are basically this entity that encapsulate all the configuration of my application. We take that and we deploy it, we interpret what's under the cover, and we make the connection to the database, to the force.com environment, and we're actually wiring the services for you. Managed and operated, so VMforce is jointly managed and operated by VMware and Salesforce.com. So you basically benefit from the huge expertise of both companies in managing infrastructure, managing a global scale data center, highly secured, audited hundreds of times a year. I'm sure Jesper will talk more about this. And you get that in VMforce. You also get the management and operation of VMware, managing the vSphere and vFabric stack. It's easier, I can say vFabric, and it means all the components. That's great. So vSphere and vFabric. And you get that a highly available data center, backups, monitoring, DR, etc. Engineered for scalability, very important. We are writing this platform stack from the ground up to be able to scale. And scale, we have engineers that did stuff in Google for hundreds of thousands of requests per second. We have engineers in Salesforce, in Jesper's team that doing enormous implementations of force.com. So this is done by, I'd like to call it professional plumbing. So people that actually knows what they're doing when they're building scalable apps. And that's very important. So you can leverage all that when you use this platform. So what is VMforce? In a nutshell, a joint venture between VMware and Salesforce.com, hosted on the Salesforce data centers. So it's a public cloud. It's hosted in the Salesforce data centers off-premise, and it's built on VMware, on the vSphere and vFabric foundations, very strong virtualization and application management services. And it's run and operated, as I said, by both companies. It can be used for almost any type of enterprise application. It can be used with the Salesforce.com services or independent. It's basically a Java standard code that you write, and that's very important. If you have in your organization Spring developers or Java developers that are familiar with the Java language, and at least from statistics, there are 6 million of them, so probably you have a few. They don't need to learn anything new in order to leverage all these services. They can write their standard Java apps and deploy it on force.com, and you will see that in the demo. So we're actually bringing the force.com simplicity to the Java world, to the Java developers. Diving a little deeper into the value proposition. Developer productivity. I'd like to emphasize that more. So we talked about the fact that we manage the software stack on top of what you have. But think about what does that mean to the developers. It means that they can, A, write in a language that they know, B, not deal with scaling and clustering and things that are not related to the business logic, and C, leverage existing libraries and existing code that the vast ecosystem of Java is written. So if they want to add a new functionality, maybe someone already did that in this vast ecosystem of Spring, or maybe someone already did that in the enterprise. And when they leave, it's not a code that nobody knows how to read and how to manage. So that's very important. Trusted, we talked a lot about this. You get the benefit from both companies. Simple maintenance and operations. Think about, you don't need to install software, you don't need to manage hardware, you don't need to maintain updates, and so on. Built-in elasticity. If you want to scale, you'll see in this demo how we can actually scale instances. And we can say scale from 1 instance to 4 instances. And we're actually taking this unit of measure, which is the WAR file, and we scale it. And we take care of the wiring of all of that. We take care of the messaging. And from your perspective, you are using this as an interface, as an API, or as a web URL, and you are getting more capacity, more real capacity of your application. The alternative, order a server, put it in the rack, anywhere from 5 to 6 weeks, depends where you work, wire all of that, then actually deploy the application on the new server, deal with all the complexity of how do I scale that, and this is something you don't need to do with VMforce. And as I said, in terms of benefit, it has a huge benefit to avoid over-provisioning. A couple of technologies we use under the hood, so vSphere for the virtualization building blocks, several vCloud platform technologies, vSphere like TC server. So basically, all your application logic is running in the TC server, vFabric TC server runtime environment. Very scalable, very lightweight app server designed for the cloud. And your development framework is pure Spring. So for example, when you are tapping into the force.com database, we are using JPA, the Java Persistency API. And if you're not familiar with it, this is a very popular and very standard way of interacting between Java objects and data code, and data repositories or databases. So again, you don't need to learn anything new here. Jesper will talk a lot about deep dive about those services, so I'll just do a quick run through of basically what you're getting from the force.com side of the picture. Mainly, you start with the force.com database, a very scalable database, and maybe your contacts and sales opportunities are already there if you're Salesforce.com customers. How many here are Salesforce.com customers? Wow. Yeah. He's smiling, that's good. Pre-built services. So you can benefit from the reporting, the indexing, search, user management, and so on. Collaboration platforms like Chatter. We'll see a little bit of that in the demo. And as we said in the beginning, the global delivery and expertise of Salesforce and the security. So when you're accessing using VMforce your data, you're accessing a very secure, hundreds of time auditing a year database. And that's extremely important. You can rely on the security of that. Short animation that basically shows what we're doing under the cover and basically what you will see in the demo. So step A, you create your application using standard Spring and Java libraries. Step 2, you deploy it into the VMforce cloud environment, and it's going from on-premise to off-premise, so nothing is installed here aside from the Spring development environment. And you can actually unit test that locally and make sure everything works, and then exactly with no code changes, literally drag and drop this into the cloud environment. Now, furthermore than that, if it goes into the cloud environment, it's not only deployed off-premise, it's also being wired. Let's try that again. Whoops. So you see, we are taking the WAR files, basically, and interpreting it and creating the connections to the database, creating the messaging mechanisms, And that's what basically allows us to scale when we want to, because we know how to scale this unit of application. So the unit of management here is not the VM. You're not directly managing any VMs. You're not being admin to a specific OVF or stuff like that. The unit is the application. And that's the key difference with platform as a service. Going quickly on the major use case, like, okay, so what do I need it for? Why should I care? Number one, you have an existing CRM application using the popular Salesforce.com environment. You want to add functionality to it. But you want to add functionality in a way that will be very quickly and very easy and leverage existing knowledge that you have in your enterprise. So you can now have Java developers working on that. They can use existing libraries that someone created in the enterprise, or they can leverage the ecosystem, as I said before. And now they can basically tap it into the existing CRM app and enhance its functionality very quickly and much more efficiently. Use case number two, you want to build a new app, a new Java app for enterprise consumption. So like an employee-facing app. You want to build a new HR system, professional services billing system, financial applications, whatever. But you want to do it with Java. You want to do it very quickly without dealing with all the complexity of deploying that. And you want to do it with a scalable database, like Force.com. And you may want to leverage existing data that you already have. So if you have an professional services app, maybe you want to use existing data of your customer base. You don't want to import it to a new data store. And you can tap into the Force.com services and leverage that. And you get reporting, you get search indexing, you get chatter out of the box, and you can tie this into your application. So you can basically benefit from both worlds. Use case number three, you want to build a public-facing app, not for your employees. Let's say you want to build the VMworld 2011 registration site. So think about it. What do I need to do to build the VMforce 2011 VMworld? Wow. 2011 registration site. I want to have a very scalable app, right? Because this is going to be elastic in nature. I'm going to get peak of requests during the event. Probably before that's, not so much. After the event, there's going to be a radical decline. But during the peak load, I have to serve all the requests. So option A, build it in-house in a non-elastic manner, over-provision for this peak load, and underutilize the capacity in all the rest. And I also want to do it in Java because I have a bunch of Java developers that they're already investing in apps. They know how to build this. I want to do this in Java. I don't want to deal with deploying servers, so I want to do this on the cloud. And in the case of this registration site, I want to leverage contacts and leads. So I want to know if very important opportunities that my sales guys are hunting is just registered for this event. So I want to get this notifications. I want to get this event wired into the system. So with VMforce, you can do all of that. You can build quickly scalable app. You can use Java. You can tap into a very scalable database, and you can leverage customer data that you already have. With that,
thanks. I'll take over here. Again, my name is Jesper Jørgensen. I'm product manager at Salesforce.com in our platform team, specifically focused on building out VMforce here together with VMware. Before I start, are there any developers in this room by any chance? Oh, actually a few. That's good. How many of those of you who said you're Salesforce.com users are building completely custom applications on Salesforce? It's only one. Okay, a couple. Salesforce.com, as it is in the name, Salesforce, is most famous and known for our CRM application. And our infrastructure and the service that we have running in the cloud right now is built from the CRM application that we started with in 2000. Along the way, we built in a lot of customization capabilities into it. And after a while, about 3 or 4, 5 years ago, we realized that we're really beginning to build out all the tools that are needed in a platform for building completely custom applications on Salesforce.com. So that's an area that's a little bit newer for us, but now as a company, we're basically trying to help our customers do CRM and do a few other vertical types of applications like service and support, and then give them a platform where they can build any application that they want. And that's a little bit newer business to us, so not everyone knows that about us. What we're trying to do is to take all the benefits that you probably heard about a lot here at this conference of the cloud and give the IT department a place where they can go and deploy applications without having to deal with any of the complexities of running hardware or managing applications on-premise and so on. So we're really a full-on public cloud in that sense. If you look at what some of our customers who are building custom applications are building on Force.com, we have a few examples or a few categories up here on this slide. What we're seeing is customers are focusing on applications that they need to build quickly, that changes a lot, that has a nice mix of both users and data using them. If it's a single user messing around with a single data set that no one else ever sees, maybe they won't build a Force.com application for it. It's typically when they have complex data interactions among a lot of different users. One of the tools that companies have used in the past to do that is Lotus Notes and similar tools. So we're seeing a lot of our customers go out right now and take the Force.com platform and replace existing Lotus Notes applications or switch from Lotus Notes to Force.com for building new solutions that they would otherwise normally have built on Lotus Notes. So it's managing documents, managing data, sharing it among people, lightweight workflow, and things like that. We see a lot of companies come to us very much from the business side. So even though it's a platform for building custom applications, we see a lot of companies where we're meeting with the business people, the line of business who says, we have some need for departmental application. We're already using Salesforce.com, so we're familiar with the product. But we want to build out something custom for our own needs. And they start building it out, and they can get pretty far along the way with our sort of point-and-click tools. So they end up building full-on custom applications, and along the way involve IT in the process. Some of these applications are more business process-centric in nature, contains workflow. Some customers are actually building out complete sort of ERP or general ledger applications on Salesforce. Of course, the big Fortune 500 companies don't do that, but if you have smaller companies that start with a CRM, which is sort of a customer list, and then begin to build out their infrastructure, some of those companies are just staying on Force.com and just continuing to build out the custom functionality they need, and also installing packages from AppExchange. So we have a third-party, an ISV marketplace where you can go and install applications from. All of these first examples are employee-facing, and that's what Salesforce has been good at traditionally. Your users are the employees of your enterprise. But recently, we've built out additional infrastructure to support public websites. That's something that many of our customers have asked for because we're already an infrastructure living in the public cloud. We're already on the outside of the firewall. So if they can use us to host their websites, that makes life easier for them for managing their own internal infrastructure. And it's particularly when these sites have data interactions. So when you're capturing data from your customers, when you're doing onboarding, when you're channeling requests from your public website to your support channel, for example, or to your purchasing channel, that these websites become really useful because you can build these websites and interact completely with all the data that you have in Force.com, where you have your accounts, your contacts, your leads, maybe you have your product catalog there, maybe you even have orders, maybe you have cases, for example, custom support information in there. So these are the things that people have traditionally built, or traditionally over the last years when we build out our custom application platform. That's what companies have built on us. We've built a set of tools to help them build applications, and that's what they've been using up until now. What we're trying to do with VMforce, with the partnership with VMware, is to say, how can we allow many more developers to build applications like this on the Force.com platform? And in order to do that, we wanted to allow these developers to use tools that they're familiar with. And that's the whole point of moving to Java. So now you can, with VMforce, you can take all these types of applications and you can build them in Java. And then that's really what we're trying to do, is sort of bring all these benefits to a wider audience. Let's talk a little bit more about what are these benefits that I'm talking about. When you traditionally hear about platform as a service, I think a couple of basic components come to mind pretty quickly. You're writing an application. That application needs to run somewhere. That application has some data, and that data needs to be stored somewhere. That's probably sort of the very basic parts that you think about. Those are the things we have on Force.com and on VMforce now, where you can write your application in Java, and you can store your data in Force.com. We're using the VMware partnership. We're using to build up the stack that runs the Java applications. Dekel explained how the various technologies from VMware that we're using for this is combined with the Spring Source technologies. So we have vSphere, vCloud, and TC Server on top of it. That is all running in a managed application cloud. So in this case, you don't necessarily actually have to deal with managing virtual machines yourself. You deal with managing an application. And we use the virtual machine technology, the VMware technology, to provide this service to you. So that's where the applications are running. The data is stored in Force.com, as Dekel also said. Of course, there you get the benefit of the strength and trust that we've built around Force.com over the last 10 years. And then what I want to talk a little bit more about is the additional set of services that you get with Force.com. But first, let me just, that slide made it back in. Let me just reiterate over the foundation of what we built at Salesforce. And this is something that is, of course, being used by our CRM customers as well. It's just not just the custom applications. Over the last 10 years, we've built up a nice data center. In fact, we now have 4 data centers, 3 production data centers. In that data center, we have servers organized in pods that isolate problems from each other. If you're on one pod and that pod has a problem, it doesn't affect any of the other pods. We can scale up that infrastructure as we get more and more customers. All the data that you store in your, what we call an organization, in your slot of our data center is backed up automatically. If you by accident delete your data, we can bring it back for you. If somebody maliciously deletes the data for you, we can bring it back for you. We also have disaster recovery for everything. So every piece of infrastructure, every function that you use can be served from a backup data center in Salesforce. So should anything happen to any one of these data centers, we can turn on a disaster recovery site and bring it back up. So you can really trust what you're doing. Like what you use Salesforce.com for, you can really trust will be around and serve your business critical needs, even in the case of disaster. We worked hard to continue to improve uptime and reliability over the years, and we're right now at 99.9% planned uptime. And we continue to improve that. We make 3 releases every year. We have 3 times a year where we take our systems down for an hour or so, and we update all of the schemas in our databases and bring it back up. Every time we do that, we put new features into the service without you having to do anything. So that's part of the benefits of being in the cloud, of course, that you benefit from our ongoing rollout of features without you having to decide, I want to upgrade to the next version, I want this new features, I want to go through this install and upgrade cycle. You don't really have to do anything. We do all that for you. We're certified with various security certifications, both sort of standard organizations certifications, and we're also being audited, as Dekel quickly mentioned, by our own customers. Most of the time when we bring in a very large customer, they actually send an auditing team to our data centers, and that means that our data centers gets audited all the time. And you as a customer, let's say you're a company with 10 people, you don't really want to send an auditing team to our data centers, but you benefit from all the other customers doing that. That's different from if you ran things yourself at home. You would kind of be responsible for building all that reliability yourself. So that's the foundation of Salesforce.com. That's what's serving our CRM customers right now, and what the platform is also built on. So you get this foundation with VMforce. With VMforce, we're adding this additional component, this application cloud that will run the applications, but the data is stored in this existing set of infrastructure, and the new application cloud will run in the same data centers and be configured to have all these same characteristics. Now, what I really think is important to understand with VMforce and the benefit that Force.com brings to it is that it's more than just data and applications. Over the years, again, we have actually built out a set of functionality that our customers are using right now, but it's being built as a set of services. So this functionality becomes services to your VMforce, to your custom applications as well. For example, you store your data in Force.com. Maybe you think about it as a normal relational database. You know you can query the data, but what about free text indexing? What about a search service for your data? That actually comes out of the box without you having to do anything. So when you build your Java application, you start storing data in Force.com, it's automatically indexed for searching, and you have an interface that you can search the data through. You can build workflows on top of this data. You can decide that a piece of data can be locked, so it can't be changed anymore, except through a process that governs who can change what. That process can span multiple different data object types, and you can map it out in a visual process manager, visual process designer, and you can view your processes and monitor and sort of get visibility into your processes in a graphical sense that way. You can build forms without having any code. So maybe you have an application where your Java developer are building an application for your end customers, but you need an administrative interface for that application as well. And your Java developer is pretty tired of building administrative interfaces all the time. So they actually don't have to do that because the data is in Force.com. You can use our standard forms editors to build a nice admin interface where an administrator can go in and edit any kind of data. You have a reporting and analytics service on top of this data. Again, you don't have to build anything. You can set up report types, and this service is business user friendly. It's a service that is designed for your business users to define reports. I think that's something for those of you who are developers in this room and those of you who are on the IT side that will appreciate a lot, because I think we're all used to building what we think are exciting applications, exciting functionality that benefit our customers, but then we get hit later on with all this additional burden from our sort of back-end office, our managers. They want to have additional visibility, additional reporting. First, they want the reports, but then afterwards, they want to be able to customize those reports themselves. They say, why do I need to ask you to sort of run this report for me? Why can't I get like a nice, cool interface into it? And then maybe, if you're unlucky, you end up actually building out your whole own reporting interface, or you go buy it as a commercial product, and then you have to integrate it to your existing solution. Reporting comes out of the box with Salesforce, so once your data is in there, a business user can go and build reports on it and build dashboards, and that's tremendously useful. You have user administration, and you have the security that comes with that. So we have a very advanced security model for users and the data that's in there. You can define in a very flexible way who can see what. And you can leverage all that from your Java application. You don't have to rebuild all this. In your Java application, we plug this into standards where we can. So if you're a Spring developer, you can use Spring Security to access some of these security interfaces. So this is what I think is really exciting about trying to build applications on VMforce. You build them in Java. That's kind of similar to what you've already done. You're storing data in a database. It's kind of similar to what you've done before. Of course, you get a lot of benefits now that it's in the cloud and robust and reliable and scalable. But you get all these services that you can tap into. And these are the services we have now. They will evolve over time. And one good example of that is the next layer of services that we've added only in the last year. We call that our collaboration platform. And what we have in here is, I don't know, how many of you heard of Chatter? A lot of our logos have changed, so Chatter here, Chatter everywhere. So we've been pretty aggressive about telling the world that we've made a major shift, and collaboration is something that we think is extremely important to build into your business applications in a horizontal way. You can't think about it as a single additional feature that you stick in your enterprise somewhere out in the corner. It's something that needs to be pervasive everywhere. So we've built it into the platform, into the Force.com platform, pervasively. Think about your data tables. We call them objects. But whenever you define a new table, a new entity, a new piece of data, data model, it comes feeds enabled, meaning that when you make changes to data in there, a feed gets generated that shows you the changes. You can subscribe to this data. And this fits into a general set of functionality where you can follow each other in much the same way as you do on Facebook. So I can write my status, you can write your status, I follow you, I see your status. That's pretty much what you're used to from Facebook. But in between all these statuses, you'll see changes to objects. You can follow an opportunity if you're a sales guy. You can follow a case if you're a support person. You can see when that changes. You can follow, vacation records if you're a people manager. You can see when your people are filing vacation records. You don't have to build anything to get all this functionality. And that's why we think of it as an additional layer in the platform. When you build VMforce applications on Force.com, all this comes out of the box as well, and you can take advantage of it. One of the most recent things we've added in the release that's coming out right now is we keep increasing our functionality around file sharing. So you're getting more and more nice screens to see all the files you've uploaded, sharing files with other people. It's becoming a pretty strong service for file sharing. So this is getting more and more powerful. Again, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to purchase anything new. This comes as part of the platform service. And of course, one of the most important things when we start talking about collaboration is, you've seen Facebook, you understand that kind of works for your family and your friends. You wish you had it for your enterprise, but of course your enterprise security team is never going to allow it in the door, or is never going to allow you to share enterprise-sensitive information on Facebook, even though it would be extremely valuable to you. In fact, a few companies have actually done that, but I think that will remain a small minority. You really need to take the exact same concept as what Facebook is. We're people, we collaborate, we want to know what's going on in each other's lives, move it into the enterprise and apply an enterprise security model for it. And we can do that because we already have that enterprise security model. Our security model grew out of CRM, and I don't know if any of you are salespeople here in the room, but salespeople are some of the most protective of their opportunity information and information they have about their customers. Many of them never want to let another sales guy see that information because they're nurturing their own opportunities. So it's something that we've been intimately familiar with for a long time. So we applied that security model to Chatter as well. So those are the layers in the Force.com platform. So we'll go back to this one for a second. And this is a huge part of what comes with VMforce. When you ask, why don't I just deploy my Java app somewhere else? Or why don't I just do this on my own? It's really just a Java app with a database. This is part of the answer. We want to give you a place where we can build services for you, and you can continue to benefit from it. Thank you very much. I think it's time for a demo.
Thank you. We'll do questions after the demo. Okay. So what we'll show you now, it's all live. It's all running in the cloud. In Salesforce.com data centers, so we hope it works. But everything is live here, no slides, just one. So what I'm going to show you, this demo has 4 parts, not 3. I added one specifically not to say 3 parts. Part number 1 is I'll show you what the developer is doing, how the developer is building a Java app and deploy it into the VMforce instance or the VMforce cloud. Then we'll show how this app is being collaborative. Basically, you will see the user, the enterprise user, me as the employee, and then you will see me as the enterprise admin, the guy that sits in the enterprise headquarters and can control the application from the enterprise. And then we'll deploy another app, and we'll show you how we scale and how we do load balancing and so on. So with that, let's switch to the Mac. OK. So for those of you who are developers in the room, you're probably very familiar with this tool. It's the Spring STS, basically an extension of Eclipse to support Spring developers. Everything here is standard Spring. You write standard Java code. The first thing I would do is I will actually deploy a new Java application, just a very simple Hello World web project. I will call it demo, and we'll add a small package. So this has nothing to do with VMforce. This is what your Spring developers are doing and what they're used to do. And this is all standard Java code that they have here. And it's all being combined into this WAR file that basically has information on what database I want to use, what messaging system I want to use, how do I want to wire my services, and so on, and obviously my business logic. So in the case of VMforce, you may be having a class here that actually using JPA to talk between this application and the force.com database. Now, let's say I've tested this internally, I unit test, everything works, I'm happy. I want to drag and drop it, or I want to deploy it in the cloud for testing or for production or whatever. So it's as simple as that. I'm creating a new server, which is basically my remote connection to the VMforce cloud. I'm logging in with credentials. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But this is my VMforce credentials based on the Salesforce security model. And we're able to sign in. So this is basically what happens right now is I'm securely connecting into the VMforce cloud instance using OAuth, single sign-on, and Spring Security. You'll see another example of that in 1 minute. And I can drag and drop my application, and this is the cool part, into this server and deploy it. Now, when I'm deploying, what happens behind the covers is everything that I said. We're taking the WAR file, we are interpreting it, we're creating all the connections, and you basically get a URL as a user. That's it. So now hopefully it will start it. Yep, it started. So now I go to a browser. I just open a new window. And if I recall correctly, it was demo 11, right? Boom. That's it. My hello world. I'm running Spring. I don't need to configure a website. Don't need to configure any messaging between my components. Don't need to configure any data access. Simple as that. Now that was hello world. Great. Not very useful, but nice for a demo. Now let's switch to something else. This is an example application that comes with Spring. It basically shows a booking application of booking and searching for hotels. Now, what we did here is we added JPA functionality to this application. We're basically now tapping this into the force.com database. And let's see what we can do with all of that. And this was deployed exactly in the same way. So this is, if we go back here to our IDE, this is actually this WAR file. A bit more complex, but exactly the same principle. The first thing is let's log in. Now, when I click login, you see we are being redirected to the Salesforce.com interface. This is a single sign-on mechanism. A lot of great work from Jesper's team, and it's all based on one mechanism of security. So I'm actually logging in with my Salesforce credentials, with my Force.com credentials, and that's very important because I'm leveraging this whole security that Jesper was mentioning. Let's log in. Let's not remember the password. And now let's start the story. So this is now me as one of the employees in Enterprise X, and I want to use this application. I want to book hotel for my business travel using my employee-facing application. So I go and search for a hotel in San Francisco, and I find only one. And let's say I don't want this hotel. I want a new one. So I'm calling my admin in the enterprise. So now this is me. This is not me. This is my friend that runs HR in my enterprise. And he's an admin. He has access to the corporate assets of doing business with hotels in this example. And he logs into the system, and he has this admin view. So he's not a developer. So as Jesper said, he's an admin, but the Java developer that wrote this app didn't have to do any of that. He didn't need to write a new admin interface to have people creating business with new hotels. We're getting all of that from the VMforce infrastructure or from the force.com forms. So the Java developer actually, lucky for him, he only wrote this or this. He only wrote the business logic. He didn't have to write all these interfaces that you're seeing right now. And in this example, let's say I'm adding a new hotel in San Francisco. So let's call it, I don't know, Hyatt or whatever. And we have a price, let's say $350 a night. I hope no one here works at the Hyatt. And now I'm back to my San Francisco search. And let's say I'm searching, you know what, let's do that. Let's call it Hyatt San Francisco. So it will make sense. We'll find it, or the address. This is, and now I should find two results. Great, I have the Hyatt. So think of what happened here. Interaction between my employee-facing app and my admin in my organization. And this is all secured, right? This is not Expedia or some Facebook app that, publicly. This is all secured in my enterprise. The $350 a night is something I negotiated from my enterprise with this hotel, and this is not something I can find outside. And I view this hotel, and let's say I don't like the price, so I'm waiting for a better deal. We negotiated a better deal. We can lower the price. And we can, by the way, Jesper mentioned Chatter. We can register for those kind of updates. So I can register in my Chatter, say I want to book the Hyatt in San Francisco, but I'm going to wait for a better deal for my enterprise. And now if I'll search again, or just click refresh to make it easy, I see the new price. So we've seen how the kind of enterprise activity affects the employee-facing app. And now let's look at it in the other way. If I'm going and booking it, I don't know if the Hyatt has an ocean view, but I'll ask anyway. And I can put my credit card here. And this is all, again, very secured based on the authentication and single sign-ons that you've seen before. And now I'm confirming and I'm booking this hotel. Now what happened here is if I'll go back to this admin view and I'll click bookings, I'll see my new booking here. Now the interesting thing here is that I can do a lot of interesting stuff with this. Here is Chatter. I can write something. For example, special deal for the Hyatt during the Credit Suisse deal negotiation, whatever. Now, and I want to share it with specific people that are allowed to see that. So these are all proprietary information of my enterprise that not, as Jesper mentioned before, not even all the folks in my enterprise are allowed to see it. So I want to make this only the sales team that are working on this deal can see it. So a lot of this experience that you're getting from applications that you see in the consumer market are now available to you in the enterprise. And you as a Java developer, let's recap on that again. You as a Java developer basically wrote your business logic. You wrote this source main Java. You wrote those source files. You didn't have to write the admin interface and all of this data connectivity and all of those stuff. you didn't have to write the, when you are interacting with that, you are basically getting the security and the integration into the force.com database out of the box. And you're also able to monitor your customers. So you have customers, and you can look at all the customers that you have, and everything is built into the system. So you get a lot of benefits from writing Java standard code on a scalable database very quickly, drag and drop, as you've seen, and leveraging the Salesforce.com services like Chatter. Now, the last thing I want to show you is a little bit more geeky on scalability. So what we mentioned before in the session that part of the value proposition of platform as a service is that we can scale instances up and down, and you don't need to worry about this. And this is a very complex task that probably you don't want to have those expertise on your shoulders. You want to have someone that, as I said, like a professional plumber doing that. So let's take an example. This is an app that basically loads a lot of data on the VMforce instance. And we had to have something goes wrong, right? It can't all run. Let's try it again. Yeah, okay, we're lucky. So one glitch is okay. So we got a certain request per second, a certain load running on the system. Again, everything live, everything is now running on the Salesforce.com data center on VMforce, actual instances, no PowerPoints. We're done with PowerPoints for today. And we got a certain request rate per second, and we're going to run the same thing with 2 instances. We got 407 requests per second with 1 instance. Let's do the same with 2 instances. And while it's running, basically what happens under the covers is that you are getting okay. This thing, just a minute. Okay. Okay, so basically now you are getting 2 instances running instead of 1, and what happens under the cover is that the system was actually able to scale those instances automatically, and you get a higher request rate. So instead of 400 before, now you're getting 780. So this is not just the system did A, spawned a new instance, and B, actually load balanced. If you look at this chart pie, it load balanced the requests between those 2 instances to have like evenly distributed load between your application. Now, if you noticed, I didn't have to configure any load balancer here. I didn't have to tweak with my database. I didn't have to tweak with my web server. I didn't have to install new software somewhere for these additional instances. So a lot of this complexity is hidden away from you. And if I'll run the same thing with 4 instances, and I will be able to, what I will try to do now, during the run of those 4 instances, I will try to kill one of them and see what happens. So let's give it just 1 minute. Okay. Let's let it finish. Oops. Okay. One last try, and okay. So well, let's move on. We tried to show this, but so you got the idea of that we can run 1 instance, scale to more than 1 instance, and actually get the system to respond. So with that, let's open the floor for questions. Yep. Sure.
Essentially, we have, of course, users defined in Salesforce.com. You can have a login and password there, or you can have Salesforce.com configured to use your own identity provider in your company. So that's a pretty common thing for people just using Salesforce.com. But now Salesforce.com can also be an identity provider for others. And we're using OAuth 2 for that. So essentially, when you come to your Java web application, the web application is configured to say, Salesforce.com is my identity provider. So you get redirected to Salesforce. And when you get redirected, the application will say, can you authorize this user to access me, the web application? Salesforce will do that and send you back with a token. And then the web application will have a token that represents a credential, an assertion that I, as a user, can now access data as this, or that the application can access data in Force.com on behalf of me. So that's pretty much how it works. And that means that every time you make a request back into Force.com, the view that you get is the view of the user. So all the security is enforced. In terms of the session tokens and the security infrastructure, that's our security infrastructure. But in terms of the coordination between the VMforce application and the identity provider, it's based on the OAuth 2 open standard. OAuth. It's something that came out. OAuth 1 came out, I don't know, 4 years ago, and was sort of a federated authentication, a delegated authentication pattern that's been evolving a lot in the consumer space. So services like Flickr started it, and it's evolved from there. And now a consortium of a group of companies, Google, Salesforce, we weren't that much involved, but Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Yahoo, I think, got together and said, how do we take the beginnings of OAuth and move it in a direction where it basically becomes a convergence between enterprise strength and sort of single sign-on that meets enterprise requirements with the kind of single sign-on patterns that's been happening in the consumer cloud for a while. So we're pretty serious. We're putting a lot of effort into supporting that. That's a pretty common scenario. Most enterprises of a reasonable size have their own way of managing users, and Salesforce.com have always had the functionality to tie into that. So you set up your Salesforce organization, you say, use delegated authentication, use my identity provider, use SAML, we support SAML for that. And then after that, you have no passwords to manage in Salesforce. Now, all users, when they log in Salesforce, they'll use their main password. This rides on top of that. So when the VMforce application sends you to the login page, you'll be logging in with your enterprise credentials.
Any more questions? Going once. So we have a demo pod at the expo floor and the VMware booth. So we have a couple of more exciting demos to show you. So feel free to stop by. Yep, go ahead. Sure.
You can do.
So yeah, so I think as I mentioned in the use case slide, so CRM, extending an existing CRM application is one of the use cases. But you can actually build a new Java app and use the underlying infrastructure, the Force.com as a generic database, and do that as well. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, as you've seen, I mean, the Spring app.
Yeah, so
for the admin, so you're talking about the admin interface?
No, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, that you can brand it completely yourself, but you'll be building out more screens yourself then. But there's nothing that prevents you from doing that. What Deckel was presenting was kind of an example of you as a large enterprise. You use Salesforce for a lot of different things. So you have all your users in there and a bunch of different apps. And then you have a single app that could be customer-facing, for example. It's custom written in Java with its own branding. but you don't really want to waste time building, back-end interface for that app. So you just reuse Salesforce. But you don't have to. You can completely throw away any user interface we have and do everything through the API and do everything custom built in your job application.
But if you use the Salesforce tools, those aren't brand.
Our goal is that all of our tools are what we just call API enabled, meaning that they exist as a service. A lot of them are today. A few of them are not quite there yet. Reporting, for example, you can create reports over the API and change reports, which is very useful. But the rendering of a report, you're still right now we will render it for you. But that's something we're working on. We want it to be a service so that you can brand it completely on your own.
I'm just curious if the target here was really just a great hosting service hosting platform for just job websites and things like that. It really was mostly for people who are tied to the Salesforce.
That's absolutely the target. But it's... to be honest, we're on a journey there, right? Because the parts that are the Salesforce.com parts, am I online here? Yeah, I am, right?
Yeah, but I'll need to switch you back.
Okay. The parts that are the Salesforce.com parts here is what we're working on. Here. One thing I will encourage you to do, well, I'll just show you something quick here, is if you go to our sites gallery, you'll see one of the things that we've been working on over the last year or so. All these screenshots are applications that are running on Salesforce. They all have their own unique look and feel. And this is our Force.com site service. And so VMforce will go in the same direction of saying, you build your own custom application, whether it's internally facing or externally facing, and you put the branding on it. And the services that I talked about, we consider these value-add services, should be services that you consume in your application and that are not necessarily tied to a particular look and feel. Many times, though, people like to have sort of a package look and feel for the back-end side that they don't have to rebuild.
So one of the advantages in the example that I've shown is this guy that managed the hotels in the enterprise side. He can probably manage, the thing that he's doing is not for specific apps. So if you add a customer, if you add an opportunity, if you add a chatter feed, it reflects all around, and all the apps are benefiting for that. Back to the point of collaboration from Jesper. Any more questions? So I guess we are between you and lunch. So thank you again for coming. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Nice.